The papers had yellowed with age, tucked away in the basement archives of St. Catherine's Abbey for over a century. Medical records, church correspondence, and police reports, all telling fragments of a story that defies rational explanation. In the winter of 1903, in the remote mountain town of Blackwood Valley, a most unusual phenomenon occurred at the Convent of the Sacred Heart. Father Thomas Merrick, a man medically documented as incapable of fathering children, somehow impregnated 8 nuns before meeting a violent end that remains shrouded in mystery to this day. What follows is a careful examination of the documented events surrounding this inexplicable case, pieced together from surviving records and testimonies that have long been kept from public scrutiny. The Convent of the Sacred Heart was established in 1878 on the outskirts of Blackwood Valley, a mining community nestled in the Appalachian foothills. The region was known for its harsh winters, isolation, and deeply entrenched superstitions that predated European settlement. The convent itself was a stark Gothic structure of gray stone and narrow windows, housing 23 nuns under the supervision of Mother Superior Agnes Caldwell. Father Thomas Merrick arrived in September of 1902 to serve as the convent's chaplain and spiritual advisor, having been transferred from a parish in Boston under circumstances that contemporary church records describe only as a matter requiring discretion and relocation. What these documents fail to mention is revealed in medical records from Massachusetts General Hospital dated June 1902, which definitively diagnosed Father Merrick with complete azoospermia, a condition rendering him entirely sterile. Following a childhood bout with mumps that had severely damaged his reproductive system. Father Merrick was 36 years old upon his arrival at Blackwood Valley, described in multiple accounts as a tall, gaunt man with penetrating dark eyes and a demeanor that inspired both reverence and unease. The local physician, Dr. William Harper, noted in his private journal that Merrick appeared unnaturally pale, as though perpetually drained of vitality, and suffered from periodic episodes of weakness requiring bed rest and medicinal tonics. The initial months of Father Merrick's tenure passed without incident, his sermons and counsel reportedly well received by both the convent residents and the townspeople who attended Sunday Mass. Mother Superior Caldwell's correspondence with the diocese in December 1902 praised his diligent attention to spiritual matters and profound understanding of theological mysteries beyond his years of study. What remains puzzling is her additional notation that the good Father seems to possess insights into matters of sin and temptation that suggest knowledge acquired beyond conventional means. The first indication of the unprecedented events to come appeared in Dr. Harper's medical log on February 3, 1903. Sister Marie Dubois, a 28-year-old nun who had taken her final vows 4 years prior, reported to the infirmary with symptoms of persistent nausea, fatigue, and unexplained abdominal tenderness. The doctor's initial diagnosis suggested a gastrointestinal ailment, but subsequent examinations revealed the unmistakable signs of pregnancy. Sister Marie vehemently denied any contact with men outside the convent, a claim supported by the strict cloistered nature of the order and the watchful supervision of Mother Caldwell. When questioned more intensively by both medical and church authorities, Sister Marie reportedly became hysterical, claiming that her condition must have resulted from visitations during the night hours, though she could recall no specific details of any such encounters. Most disturbing was her insistence that these episodes occurred only after confessing certain sins to Father Merrick, who had prescribed unusually intense penance involving solitary prayer at midnight in the convent chapel. By the end of February 1903, 2 more nuns, Sister Catherine Walsh, age 32, and Sister Elizabeth Morgan, age 25, presented with identical symptoms. Dr. Harper's notes from this period reflect increasing bewilderment as he writes, "I find myself confronting a medical impossibility. 3 women, all bound by vows of chastity, all residing in complete isolation from male contact, save for Father Merrick, who, I must note, is himself incapable of procreation. All manifesting pregnancies within weeks of one another. I have examined each case personally and can verify their conditions without doubt. Either my medical understanding is fundamentally flawed, or something occurs at Sacred Heart that defies natural law." The diocese dispatched Monsignor James Blackwood to investigate the situation on March 10, 1903. His confidential report to the bishop, only recently discovered during renovation work on the diocesan archives, contains observations that church authorities clearly preferred to suppress at the time. "I arrived at the Convent of Sacred Heart with expectations of discovering some mundane explanation, perhaps a breach in security allowing intruders, or even the shameful possibility of consensual indiscretions," wrote Monsignor Blackwood. "What I discovered instead has shaken my theological foundations. The 3 affected sisters, upon separate and private interrogation, each recounted identical experiences. Following confession with Father Merrick, they experienced unusually vivid dreams in which they were visited by what they described as a presence bearing Father's face, but not his essence. Upon waking, they discovered peculiar bruising around their abdomens and inner thighs, and a sensation of internal heaviness. Most disturbing are the changes I observed in Father Merrick himself. The man appears simultaneously enervated and animated by some inner vitality that seems to pulse beneath his increasingly pallid skin. When questioned about the sisters' conditions, he offered theological explanations involving immaculate conception that border on heretical. I must recommend his immediate removal and psychiatric evaluation." The diocese did not act on Monsignor Blackwood's recommendation. Church correspondence suggests a reluctance to create scandal, particularly given the lack of any rational explanation for the pregnancies. Instead, the affected nuns were sequestered in a separate wing of the convent, ostensibly for special prayer and contemplation during their unusual blessing. By April 1903, 5 more nuns had joined their ranks: Sisters Agnes Parker, Ruth Coleman, Josephine Miller, Frances Xavier, and Teresa Benoit, ranging in age from 22 to 36 years. All reported the same progression: confession with Father Merrick, unusual penance requirements, nocturnal visitations remembered only as fragmented dreams, and subsequent pregnancy. Medical examinations confirmed each case, creating what Dr. Harper termed an epidemic of impossible conception. The pregnancies themselves exhibited unusual characteristics from the outset. Dr. Harper's detailed notes document accelerated fetal development across all cases, with gestational markers suggesting 7 months of development after only 4 months of pregnancy. All 8 exhibited extreme pallor, dramatically increased appetite, particularly for rare meats, and a strange darkening of the veins visible beneath their skin. Blood samples revealed severe anemia, resistant to iron supplementation, as though something was continually depleting their bodies of vital essence. Most alarming were the accounts from other nuns that the pregnant sisters sometimes spoke in their sleep in voices unlike their own, uttering phrases in Latin and Aramaic that, when translated, contained theological concepts of exceptional sophistication. Father Merrick's behavior during this period grew increasingly erratic. The parish deacon, Michael Sullivan, documented the priest's transformation in letters to his brother. a seminary professor in Philadelphia. Father Merrick no longer resembles the man who arrived last autumn. Sullivan wrote in early May 1903. Though gaunt as ever, he now exhibits periods of tremendous physical strength, moving heavy furniture without assistance. His sermons have taken a troubling direction, focusing extensively on obscure biblical passages regarding the Nephilim and the sons of God who took human wives. Most concerning is his appearance. His skin has a grayish cast. His eyes seem to catch and reflect light in the manner of nocturnal animals. And he is now exclusively nocturnal himself, conducting affairs only after sundown and remaining in his chambers throughout daylight hours. The pregnant sisters follow his instructions without question, while the others increasingly avoid his presence. I fear something fundamental and unwholesome has overtaken our spiritual leader. The first birth occurred on June 17, 1903, when Sister Marie Dubois went into labor approximately 5 months after her initial symptoms, far too early for a normal pregnancy. Yet the infant appeared fully developed. Dr. Harper's medical notes from the delivery contain observations so disturbing that several pages appear to have been deliberately removed from his journal, with only fragments remaining. The infant emerged without crying. Skin translucent with visible circulatory structures, unlike any I have previously observed. Eyes fully open, and tracking movement from the moment of birth. Abnormal dentition already present. Umbilical connection to mother unusually vascular and resistant to clamping. The fate of this first child remains undocumented in surviving records, though an entry in Mother Caldwell's private diary from June 18 contains only the cryptic statement, "God forgive us for what had to be done." May Sister Marie find peace in the knowledge that the abomination has been returned to whatever darkness spawned it. Sister Marie herself did not survive long after the delivery. Dr. Harper's death certificate cites complications of childbirth as the official cause, though his private notes mention catastrophic hemorrhaging, unlike any obstetrical emergency previously encountered, and tissue degradation, suggesting some form of rapidly accelerating necrosis originating from the uterine wall. Within 2 weeks, Sisters Catherine and Elizabeth also delivered similarly unusual infants, both births occurring under cover of night with only Father Merrick and Mother Caldwell in attendance. Both sisters succumbed to similar postpartum complications, their bodies removed from the convent before Dr. Harper could conduct proper examinations. By early July 1903, the situation at the Convent of Sacred Heart had deteriorated beyond containment. The 5 remaining pregnant nuns exhibited increasingly disturbing physiological and behavioral changes. Parish records document Sister Agnes Parker speaking in perfect ancient Sumerian during Mass, reciting texts that a visiting antiquities scholar later identified as fragments of a pre-biblical creation myth, long thought lost to history. Sister Ruth Coleman reportedly developed the ability to suspend small objects in the air around her bed, while Sister Josephine Miller's skin had become so sensitive to sunlight that exposure to even diffused daylight caused immediate blistering. Father Merrick now rarely left the convent grounds, conducting abbreviated masses and spending increasing amounts of time with the pregnant sisters in the sequestered wing. When Mother Caldwell finally intervened in mid-July, demanding to be present during Father Merrick's sessions with the sisters, she emerged visibly shaken. Her diary entry from July 15th contains perhaps the most revealing contemporaneous account. "I have witnessed blasphemy beyond articulation." Father Merrick opened his cassock to reveal abdominal incisions that appear self-inflicted, yet show no signs of healing or infection. From these wounds, He extracted what I can only describe as translucent membranous sacs containing fluid and cellular structures. These he pressed against the distended abdomens of the sisters, who accepted this unholy communion in states of ecstatic trance. When questioned, he spoke not with his voice, but with many voices in concert, explaining that he serves as vessel for entities that existed before your God drew breath, and that the children soon to be born would prepare the way for those who wait beyond the threshold. I have telegraphed the bishop for immediate intervention. God preserve us from what gestates within these walls. The diocese's response came too late. On the night of July 23, 1903, the remaining 5 pregnant nuns went into simultaneous labor. What transpired inside the convent remains largely undocumented, as the sole surviving witness, a novice named Sister Clara Bennett, who had hidden in a linen closet, was deemed insane after recounting her observations. Her fractured testimony, preserved in the asylum's records, describes the walls themselves pulsing as though breathing, and a light emanating from Father Merrick's eyes and mouth as he moved between the 5 sisters, each crying out not in pain, but in ecstatic communion. She claimed to witness the infants emerging not from the natural birth canal, but through temporary apertures that formed and sealed in the sisters' abdomens, and that these newborns moved with purpose unlike natural infants, their limbs too numerous and articulated in impossible configurations. Most significantly, she described Father Merrick collecting these beings in a ritual basin, whereupon he opened his own chest cavity like a door on hinges, revealing not human anatomy, but a chamber of shifting darkness into which he placed the newborns, his flesh closing seamlessly afterward. What is verifiable through official records is that at approximately 3:17 a.m. on July 24, 1903, the convent's bell tower began ringing of its own accord, audible throughout Blackwood Valley. When townspeople and local authorities arrived at the convent gates, they discovered Mother Caldwell on the steps, her habit soaked with blood not her own, clutching a crucifix and repeatedly murmuring what witnesses described as an exorcism rite in Latin, Greek, and languages unknown. Inside, they discovered the bodies of all 5 sisters who had been in labor, each bearing unusual post-mortem surgical interventions to their abdominal cavities. Father Merrick was found in the chapel, his body mutilated in what investigating officers initially presumed to be a homicide of exceptional violence. The official report notes that the subject's chest cavity has been opened with surgical precision and emptied of all major organs. No such organs were located on the premises despite thorough search. Cause of death is exsanguination and organ removal by person or persons unknown. The subsequent investigation yielded more questions than answers. No infants, living or deceased, were found on the convent grounds. Mother Caldwell, the primary suspect in Father Merrick's death, provided no coherent testimony, having lapsed into catatonia from which she never recovered. The diocese quickly moved to contain the situation, officially attributing the deaths to an outbreak of consumption complicated by collective religious hysteria. Most disturbing, however, were the findings of the coroner who examined Father Merrick's remains. His confidential report, sealed until 1967, contains observations that cast doubt on whether Father Merrick was entirely human at the time of his death. The subject presents numerous physiological anomalies inconsistent with normal human anatomy, wrote Dr. Frederick Chambers, county coroner. The chest cavity, though emptied of organs, contains structural modifications suggesting an alternative circulatory system had been developing. alongside the human cardiovascular structures. The sternum and rib configuration show evidence of adaptation to permit the voluntary opening of the thoracic cavity, an evolutionary impossibility in mammals. Most significantly, what remains of the reproductive organs bears no resemblance to the atrophied structures documented in the subject's medical history from 16 months prior. Instead, the tissues appear to have transformed into glandular structures of unknown purpose, connected to the abdominal wounds via networks of specialized ducting. It is my professional opinion that whatever Thomas Merrick may have been when he arrived in Blackwood Valley at the time of death, he had physiologically become something that defies classification within established taxonomic systems. The Convent of Sacred Heart was permanently closed by papal decree in October 1903. The surviving nuns reassigned to convents across the country with strict instructions never to discuss the events they had witnessed. Dr. Harper's medical practice mysteriously burned to the ground in December 1903, destroying most of his records, and the physician himself relocated to Europe, where he eventually committed suicide in a Zurich hotel room in 1907, leaving behind a journal containing only the cryptic final entry. They were not destroyed. The vessels merely changed. I have seen one in Vienna, wearing a face not quite its own. Perhaps most disturbing are the scattered reports that emerged in the decades following the incident. In 1919, a Catholic orphanage in Montreal documented the case of 8 children who appeared simultaneously at their door, all approximately 16 years of age, all bearing striking physiological similarities despite differing ethnic appearances, and all claiming to have been sent by Father to prepare accommodations. In 1932, a religious retreat in rural Vermont was found abandoned, the 43 attendees missing without trace. The sole evidence recovered was a journal belonging to the retreat leader, containing repeated entries stating only, "The children of Sacred Heart have matured." The threshold weakens, and in 1947, a geological survey team in the Appalachian region near the former site of Blackwood Valley reported discovering a series of caves bearing anatomically impossible fossils and ritualistic markings. The team's subsequent disappearance was officially attributed to a landslide, though no geological evidence supporting such an event was ever documented. What remains incontrovertible is that Father Thomas Merrick, a man medically incapable of procreation, somehow impregnated 8 nuns at the Convent of Sacred Heart in 1903. That these pregnancies exhibited impossible characteristics is supported by surviving medical documentation. That these pregnancies resulted in births of entities that defied conventional biological classification is suggested by fragmentary eyewitness accounts. And that something moved between worlds in that remote convent, using human vessels to achieve incarnation for purposes unknown, remains perhaps the most disturbing possibility of all. The final piece of evidence worth consideration comes from Mother Caldwell herself. In 1932, shortly before her death after 29 years of institutional care, she experienced a brief period of lucidity, during which she provided a statement to her psychiatric caretaker. They were never separate entities, she reportedly stated with perfect clarity. Father Merrick, the children, the presences beyond, all fragments of a singular consciousness that exists outside our conception of time and identity. They did not require human vessels because they could not otherwise exist in our world. They required human vessels because they needed to understand human existence from within, to learn our strengths and weaknesses before the greater crossing could begin. What gestated within those 8 women was neither human nor alien, neither divine nor demonic, but something that renders such distinctions meaningless. Fragments of an intelligence so vast that even its smallest components could manipulate the fabric of human biology to serve its purposes. And they continue to walk among us, wearing faces that almost resemble our own, expanding their understanding, manipulating our institutions, preparing us for a transformation that has already begun.